gentlemen, I have the great good fortune to bring to you Miss Jennifer Leong, also known by her pen name or her creative name as Soy Avocado. Which would you like to be addressed by, my dear Jennifer or Soy?
Jennifer will be fine. Thank you.
Okay. I was telling her before we started our interview that I've used many pen names myself, depending on what projects I was working on. So I've been always intrigued for months and months and months. I've been very intrigued by the name Soy Avocado. Now, let me tell you what that conjures in my head. It conjures a spicy sauce, okay? And it also conjures soybeans. So I think of nurturing and nourishing and that sort of thing. And then I also think of avocado as a marvelous, I don't know whether it's a fruit, I guess it's a fruit. And it has this huge, wonderful seed in it. And I have to tell you, I have a special relationship with avocado. I used to teach meditation. And because so many people get all caught up and add importance in the wrong places. I used to joke when I would have my students chant mantra, we chanted ba na na ba na. And then the other one that we would use was avocado na wakada, avocado na wakada. And you know, there is an argument that that consciousness alteration from mantra comes not so much as the intonation, but instead that regularization of the breathing, that regularization of the vocalizations, because you get overtones that occur when a note or a series of notes is said again and again and again. My theory and the theory of some others I've talked to is that we begin to sense or perceive those overtones to that base frequency. And as we make our consciousness more subtle, we in fact get to an altered state of consciousness. Okay, enough of that. But tell me, Jennifer, how did you adopt the name Soy Avocado for some of your writing?
Well, it's a Facebook name actually. So this was started during the COVID times and everything was locked down and I needed to find out what was going on with my exercise place and some other things that were going on. So I started this Facebook account called Soy Avocado. And soy, well, it's of course soybean and avocado is avocado, but it's actually from Spanish in the sense that soy means I am. And avocado
Yo soy.
sounds like,
sure.
So yeah, yo soy, yes. So, and then avocado sounds like avocado or avocada. So I've adopted that because I think I would like to be an advocate for things that I believe in, and I believe in hope. And so I would like to say that I am an advocate for hope.
Good for you. How wonderful. Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah.
But it wasn't something that was so complicated. I didn't think too much about it because I just wanted to have a name and I didn't even want to put my name there out on Facebook. Yeah. So that's how I started.
Okay. Okay. One of the things that I always enjoy learning about my poets, I have guests with me on Poets of the East, is I'm always intrigued as how the poet, how the author, how the artist began. Did you start writing when you were very young, in school, in college? Where did you begin writing and how?
Right. It's an interesting question because I only started writing creatively about 1.5 years ago. Before that, I knew that I could write argumentative essays or little paragraphs here and there, but it was never about giving rein to imagination or to write what I call things that are quite nonsensical. Yeah, because some of the things are so so crazy that I just put it down, and I just feel that it is fun to do and fun to read as well. So I really started about, let's say, August 2020. And that was not writing poetry, but more like about writing a monologue. So that was COVID lockdown as well. And during that time, I just remember that there was this online, what do you call that, course that I wanted to take. And one of my friends also joined me, and we decided that we would take I think it was an 8-week course. So I felt that it would be good to be able to write a monologue. And that was during that time I understood what writing was about. So the very first session, the trainer asked us to write something that comes to mind straight away. And within 3 minutes, we have just to put our pen down. So I was very smug about it. I suppose I still think I'm task-oriented, but at that time, it was totally task-oriented. You give me 3 minutes, I give you a piece with an introduction, and then there's a like method or body, and then at the end, there was a conclusion. I was a science student all the way until pre-university. So it was like an experiment for me. I had to have a head, a body of the method, and then the conclusion at the end. So I was, okay, I'm done. And when he said that, you have to work on this for another 7 weeks, I said, I'm done here. What have I got to do with this? I'm finished. I already finished my piece, right? So this is going to be so strange that I have to keep writing this for 7 weeks. And I wrote about pottery in that particular piece. And at the end of the day, at the end of the 8 weeks, there was nothing about pottery in the piece. So it's really interesting how it evolved. And that also taught me something, because during lockdown, COVID lockdown, only essential workers could go back to work. And then I started questioning my own worth as a worker. I mean, in the whole scheme of things, right? So, and I wasn't a police officer, neither was I a healthcare worker. So there was no reason for me to go back to work. I mean, I was just involved in some things that were quite small and in a way, and yet, it's to do with economics, right? So I was not essential. And that kind of made me examine myself and my role and what really is essential in life. Who are the essential workers? So if you were somebody who was doing some other stuff and maybe involved in food and in the supermarket, you would probably be able to go to work, but I couldn't. And I had to write in to go to work and justify why I needed to go to work, because if I don't, then certain things there will be repercussions, right? So it's monetary, but at the same time, they didn't say that all contracts would stop. So I just had to go through with those things. And it was very, 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 how would I say? It was a moment of discovery that I could not just put things in silos and like filing cabinets, like, okay, this is it, and this is it. So that really shook me up a little bit. And I realized that we can't put people into filing cabinets. Yeah.
May I ask what kind of work you do?
I am a lawyer who does property transactions, yes. So
Oh,
not important in that sense. It's not a do or die, not a life or death thing. But at the same time, if the things are not done on time, there'll be interest and damages payable. So in that sense, I wasn't essential, but I had all these things that would be consequences if things are not done on time. Yes. So,
well,
and they didn't say that all contracts stop, right? So I had to monitor like a hawk.
well, you always have come across as a person with an active mind and a very analytical, uh, I'm going to call it scientific attitude. You know, uh, a serious-minded person who's used to, thinking carefully about things. And I was wondering if you were a scientist. Over the months where I've seen you perform, I've wondered, gee, is she a scientist? What kind of scientist is she? So you're a lawyer.
Yes.
Well, it still
But I did,
follows that.
yeah, but I did science all the way till before law school.
What kind of
So
science did you like?
I liked bio and chemistry. Physics and I never made it together. No.
Yeah, I was
But
a
that's also, yeah.
big fan of
Well, how about
biology
yourself?
myself.
Ah, yes.
I thought I wanted to work in neurology. So I got
Wow.
all these books on neurology. And when it came time for college, because I had done projects with the college while I was still in high school, I had an opportunity to literally then move into the lab at the college as in a neurology lab, which is something I was thrilled to do. But then something happened. I got to tour the lab and they were doing experiments on monkeys, vivisection. They had monkeys immobilized and they were probing their brains while they were alive,
Okay.
awake, immobilized, and subjecting them to various, very intense stimuli as a way. I understood the logic, of what they were trying to do. They were trying to map the different parts of the brain reacting, but my heart would not allow me to do that. I said, is there any other lab I could work in? And they said, no, this is your opportunity. You can come here, work here, get paid, and get your tuition free. And I said, I can't do that. I cannot
Yeah.
participate in
Yes.
that. It would be impossible.
No. No.
So,
Yeah.
so that was the end of
Yes.
that. And then later, much later, I got involved with computers because it was a technology. Uh, I began to do light shows, laser shows, planetarium shows, and it seemed to me that if I understood electronics, I would be able to further my career and come up with some interesting effects and stuff on my own. So I took computer courses, and then I had a chance to interview for a neurology lab to do
Mm.
neurological research. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. And the thing is, because I'd done all this reading in neurology, I knew all the terms, I knew all the conditions, I knew the different excitation sites. So I was really, ideal. From their point of view, I was an ideal
Yes.
candidate. So they hired me, and the pay was really good. And I got to work in a lab, which was really interesting. And it was a neurology lab, so it was very interesting. And then the other shoe dropped again. This device that I built that was essentially very similar conceptually to a heart pacer instead was used in the brain and in the spinal cord, putting pulses, putting electrical signals on the spine and in the brain. Sounds good. It does certain good things. But then I found out that they didn't tell people, that they did experiments on people without them knowing. One of the senior scientists came back from a trip and he said, "Oh, we have a huge problem." And I said, "Did the machine not work?" Because I was concerned about the machine that I made. Did it not perform correctly? God forbid something went wrong. And he said, "No, the machine was perfect." He said, "But I had this woman hooked up. I had the electrodes in her brain and in her spine, and I was experimenting and trying the different settings and looking at the oscilloscope and taking pictures." He said, I completely forgot there was a woman attached. And she was laying there calm when I started, and when I was done and I looked up, she was knotted in a ball, and she had not regained consciousness a week later. So I said to him right then, I quit. I will not work for people who could treat human beings like that. And
Yes.
it was terrible, and I was really annoyed because I wanted to do that research, but didn't want to. I wouldn't allow myself to participate in that.
No.
Enough of that. Enough of that. Um, Soy, Soy, you wonderful person, you. So you had a chance to do a lot of technical writing as a lawyer, I imagine, writing case law, making appeals. Did you do court cases? Did you speak in court?
I did for when I was younger. So when I was younger, it was easier to get off with mistakes because people would say, oh, young lawyer. So all the mistakes came up. So after that, I kind of settled into doing solicitor's work and I didn't really go to court very much.
Okay, okay. Now, you mentioned how your poetry really blossomed during the COVID period. We know how devastating COVID was, how many people have died, how important it is for people to behave scientifically and intelligently when we're faced with these things. But I was wondering, do you see some good coming from COVID?
Yes, personally for myself, because I grew during that period as a person. Well, before that, I was kind of like a tiger mom, and I would try to fit everybody, especially my kids, into silos, right? So it was only during the monologue where I discovered this, and kudos to Jeffrey Tan, who was the director for that course, and was run in conjunction with the Arts House Singapore. And so that was writing a monologue. So no poetry at all in that sense. So it was only during the period of mid 2021 where the drama group that I am with, including Li Ming and some of the other friends there, we somebody from there, I think it was Yu Ping as well as Larissa, said, oh, we just posted a poem on our chat group. And then we said, oh, this is interesting. And we said, shall we start writing? No, shall we have a poetry and coffee club? And then the convener, Christopher Lowe, said, yeah, why don't we have a little subgroup? Whoever's interested in poetry and coffee would, join that subgroup. So I said, oh, okay. And the first meeting that we had, I rushed off from work to arrive at the place, and I had no poem at all. And I said, okay, all of you who have poems, can I borrow your poem to read? But failing that, let's do Humpty Dumpty together. So that's how I started as an egg. So the Humpty Dumpty has always been very, very important to me and very dear to me because we are all grown-ups, right? But we did Humpty Dumpty, had a great fall, and then we started, like moving around and jumping up and down on our chairs to simulate riding horses, the king's men and all that, the king's horses. So that's how we started, and I had no idea what a limerick was at all. And then I saw that one of my cousins in the US, she was doing some line drawings and all that to raise funds with t-shirts for her son. But okay, let me backtrack a little bit. So what happened was that while we were just starting with this, Li Ming and a few other people saw that this Autism Resource Center's drive called ABSW, a very special walk, wanted to raise funds for the Autism Resource Center. And that was in June 2021, right? So we said, oh, we have no idea how to write poems, but we're willing to try, and we would try to raise funds by writing poems. So we had a very, very conservative target that we wanted to raise, because we figured if nobody would like our poetry, then we would just donate some money and cover that amount. But thank God that we covered almost 10 times the amount that we targeted for.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really by God's grace. So we were very, very interested, and that's how my poetry journey started, actually. And coming back to the cousin who was drawing these line diagrams, right? So she was actually trying to raise funds for her son, her adult son, who has severe autism, and she lives in San Francisco. So I said, can I borrow some of your drawings? Because she had this lamb drawing, and I said, can I write a poem or two using Mary Had a Little Lamb and changing some of the words? Because one of the persons who actually was very instrumental in our drama group is Mary. Mary, she taught us what a limerick was. So I didn't know what it was. So she taught us, and then we started writing. So I said, okay, so there's a lamb and there's Mary. Why don't I just, write Mary had a little lamb, but in a different way, right? So yeah, so that's how this got connected. And then so Fiona is the cousin in the US, and she drew something for me because so I wrote this limerick. The very first one that I wrote was called the man in the I think it's called the man in the muddle. So yes, so actually she has so she drew to that, and then after that her drawings just took off because I think to raise funds by selling t-shirts with prints would take a long time to amass a certain amount sufficient for building a home for the future for the son. But now she's doing this. This is a drawing. It's a portrait.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
Sorry, it's a bit there's reflection, but basically this is of my dog who passed, but this was done when he was very old.
Very pretty.
Yes.
Very pretty.
So
Wow. Very
so
talented.
after that, it just unleashed this whole ability that was always there, but was never really how would I say, was never really explored or never really she just wasn't drawing that way until after this. So
Well,
it just became
nice.
so beautiful, right? And yeah, now she's very happily drawing, and it makes her happy to draw this as well. Because she
Sure.
loves animals, she loves dogs in particular. So it's so thinking that, when we were helping the Autism Resource Center, that we were helping them, actually we were helping ourselves as well, because then I also realized that, hey, after the autism drive stopped, I realized I had withdrawal symptoms and I needed to continue writing poetry. So I said, oh no, where do I go now from here, right? And then Li Ming said, hey, there's this thing called Sipo Raimo coming up, which is Southeast Asia Poetry Writing Month. And that was in September. So June to September. So June was taken up by the autism drive. So July, August, I was like, there's nowhere to write. There's no reason for me to write and all that. So Sipo Raimo, the Southeast Asian one, came up in September 21. And later I spoke to somebody else who is a moderator in the Singapore Poetry Writing Month. And she said it's very strange for me to have started with Sipo Raimo, not Singpo Raimo. But I said that was the timing that was then, right? So anyway, it was good as well. It was interesting because there are different forms of poetry that came from Southeast Asia, that's from Southeast Asia, which we were encouraged to explore the forms of. So I wrote some poems based on Southeast Asian forms. For instance, Stars was written according to the Lilith, which is a Thai form. And then Architecture, which is more recent for this year's Sipo Raimo in August 22, included the Filipino forms of the Awit, which is a song, and a Dalit, which is like 4 lines and 8 syllables at the end. And it's combined with the Italian sestina. So this was also part of the prompts that was given by the moderator for Sipo Raimo. So it's interesting. So rich, so many different forms. Yes.
Well, wonderful. Do you have an interest in any other arts yourself?
I used to sing in the choir in church. And then COVID happened and we stopped singing during COVID. And so I was telling you that I joined this drama group, right? Well, so the reason I joined was because okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. So I joined this mediation course and I didn't like learning about how to be a mediator. I actually realized that I enjoyed myself playing the difficult parties, the parties that were at loggerheads. So I said, hey, this going to different personas and being the quarrelsome party is quite fun, right? Being mediator is not really very fun. So anyway, I decided I wasn't going to go on with the mediating thing. And so I said, okay, maybe I should take up some courses on acting. So I went for one workshop, and that was some years ago, and I met the then convener there, Alicia, and she invited me to go for one of the drama slams. So when I went there, I was more interested in what they were doing, because they were reading to kids who were underread too. So the children have parents who are incarcerated, so they don't have very much exposure to reading in English. So I said, okay, I'm going to join this group, not because I was interested in acting or I wanted to take acting further, but more because I really believe that children should start reading young. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Singapore education system, but when you go to school, you have to know how to read. The school is not going to teach you how to read. So at 6 or 7, you would have to solve problem sums. You would have to be able to read and process things and do things according to what you read. And I can read, I think, yet I cannot do some of the problem sums, even at primary school level. So what are the chances of them getting out of that system, right? That whole cycle, if they can't even read? So so that's something that I believe very firmly in. And I think for myself, I've got 3 kids, and we would always make up stories. Yeah, so when I told my children that I was going to do this reading thing with children, they said, oh yes, that you can do. Please do not teach them math, because when I taught my kids math, they said, your sums don't work out, because the balloons are they're supposed to burst, or you're supposed to give them away. But at the end of the day, you have like 15 more balloons and maybe 15 and a quarter more balloons than when they first started, when they were all bursting and you giving them all away. So they said, okay, stories and reading, yes, you can do that, but please do not confuse people with your nonsensical, non-existent math skills. So I've never been good at math in that sense. Yeah. But then I realized that my poetry involves a lot of counting. So I think, so I think that is really God's sense of humor. Like, okay, you can't count in real life, but in poetry world, yes, you can. So that's I find that really hilarious as well.
Well, I think one of the interesting things I've seen in your work is that it's very graphic, if you will, when you have poems that not just work vertically, but work across and work down. You have a flexibility, and you include that the flexibility of how to read it. I think that's very interesting, and I wonder if part of that is, do you read Chinese script, which is vertical? I think.
No. Okay, I'm not. So the generations before myself would read Chinese words vertically. The newspapers were that way long ago, but it's now left to right, like English.
Okay.
Yes. So
I
during
was
my
just
time,
curious.
we were okay, but I wasn't very hardworking as a reader of Chinese works. So I know my friend was reading books that time where they were going vertically and right to left, but
Yeah.
I wasn't so much into those things. So
I
yeah.
was just curious. I thought it had struck me interesting, since you are a person that kind of bridges East and West, at least in language, and write in English, that I was wondering, did part of that spring from that sense that language sometimes goes this way, sometimes goes this way? I always thought that was interesting about your work.
I don't really think it's because I was reading Chinese scripts that way,
Sure,
but
sure.
I think it's because when I suppose when children are involved, right? they have very short attention spans. So you just want to do things that can be ended as quickly as possible if there was a need to end it, or if you sense that they don't want to continue, so you
Yeah.
can just end there. So I suppose that could have come from the ability to have things, kind of like at Easter egg level. So you can just grab something, and then if you don't want it, you can just put it back there. So I always am very mindful that children and the reader may not have the attention span to just continue the whole thing, because sometimes the poems can be quite long. So
Sure.
yeah, so that's that.
You
And I
know,
just
the
want to
other
give a
thing,
shout out as well to Camlin, because after Sipo Raimo, I didn't know where to go again, right? Because that only took me to September 21. So what happens next? So then on Facebook, she said, hey, move over to Singapore Poetry Writing Month. So that's where I ended up with. And then I started posting poems there every day. And the people there were very welcoming. And Kianse was Lo Kianse was one of the persons who was posting every day. So he was welcoming. I mean, I thought, oh, maybe he's the only one who is allowed to post every day, but he said, no, you can post. So that's where I also continued writing. And then, of course, Camlin started Between the Lines, and that's where we met. Yes.
I also know that there's a thread in both graphic arts as well as improvisational music, where sometimes rather than a pre-scripted narration line, that sometimes phrases are cut. There's a William Burroughs would cut up pages of text and reassemble them in a very random way. There was a musician, John Cage, who used randomized sound for his compositions and sometimes used silence in his compositions.
Mm,
But
yes.
I saw connections there, which sometimes exist and sometimes don't. Flexible that way. Okay, let me ask you this. If a young person asked you, is poetry worth doing? Is poetry worth exploring? Or is it just something so irrelevant to the world, so irrelevant to life? What would you say to a young person?
Well, I have always liked rhyme, and I find that rhyme actually helps children to read. So, yes. So, with some of the children that I read with, when I find that they can't really read, I will use very basic rhymes so that they can feel a little bit more confident. And rightly so, because they then can learn how to start reading, right? Like mad, cat, rat, hat, sat. So I like Dr. Seuss and for children. And I love to rhyme as well, because I really find that it helps and it sounds fun. It just
Yeah,
makes things very fun. Yeah. But I was going too much into end rhyme at Singapore Poetry Writing Month. And when I think Dr. Ravi commented that, hey, you don't have to always end rhyme. So that kind of made me think as well. So I started moving away from it as something that I needed to do and I had to do. So so it was very liberating as well, because then I can do other things as well and not just do end rhymes. So it's very fun, because you can do so many different things with words, and poetry is now not so formalized in that sense where it has to be end rhymes all the time, or it has to be this all the time. So it's fun. And I now find that if I don't write, I can't process some of the things that I go through. So it's, how would I say? So it's not irrelevant at all. And even when you read things and you can't even string together a poem, it doesn't matter. You just put words there, and somehow or other they may just become a poem later on. So we don't have to worry about the fact that they don't rhyme or that the thoughts are all over the place. Yeah. And only about last week I discovered that when my thoughts were all over the place when I was in Ireland, Then Tears and Lamentations when when it came to writing that, the Dua Tres Pentas step form, which was created during Singapore Writing Month, right? Poetry Writing Month on 22nd April this year, really helped me because my thoughts were so disparate that when I didn't know where to put them. So when I had all these different stanzas, different steps, then they could all work. So really poetry is something that I would say we should all try, and I find that easier to do than prose, I think, in that sense, because prose has to have proper paragraphs, proper sentences. I don't know. I mean, maybe one day I'll return to writing prose, but not at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've learned a little something about the amazing uh, Soy Avocado, about the amazing Jennifer. And I was wondering if you'd read some poetry for us.
Okay, I'll try. So this was the one during the Southeast Asia Poetry Writing Month, and it is written in the Thai Lilith poetry form. So here goes stars. No accident, birth. Birth gives life to Earth. Earth, the third planet. How do you feel and do you regret? Give yourself a boo, feel sad every sunset because of the bad, terrible things that are going at a pace that mars connection with others. Brace we must for the far distance, show each other grace and some patience. Patience helped me see my own frailty that is dark, not weak. Vengeance it seeks, the stark reality reeks of self-righteousness which barks, twists, truths, and yells useless against the deep angst of a nefarious foe, self-crowned virus which spares none. Its various strains make good rest rather rare. Much is at stake. Stake hold, claim, see stars in each, although scarred we all are we not? Caught up in a knot, no bar to being accorded gem status. Jewels are loved, none condemns. Condemns is too strong, a word. And wrong to think I know it all. Pride traps before falls, and so I ought to recall the false judgments which I pronounced on others who are stars who may be marred, obscured from shining right, but maybe because their light is shy, needs coaxing to brighten it, to become the highlight it befits.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
The second one is called Architecture. This is the one where it's in two Filipino forms, the awit, which is the song, and also the dalit, which is the end part of it, where a dalit needs to have 4 lines of 8 syllables each. And it's written in a sestina, the Italian form of poetry. And I have to thank Gan Si Xiong for this, because when I was reading up on the sestina, I couldn't make sense of it because it was always using numbers to describe one, how the cycle goes, right? But when he wrote the sestina, and words kind of speak to me a little bit more, so then I could see the trend in words. But with numbers, they just floated past me, yeah. So this architecture, ancient architecture, the agora in Greece, long literature texts, philosophers who tease, our thinking processes, Socrates' way may freeze, Greece lightning or bright spark, to others it's just ease. What do I envision? What does my mind's eye see when a frieze I study? Does it make sense to me? I perceive this, my architect is clear to me, is my Lord God, he's almighty, he precedes Greece. He's the Alpha, the Omega, I hope you see. He gives me faith, hope, love, and strength, though tethers tease. While pride falls down, tattered and torn, expired east tries to threaten, leaden my heart, wants it to freeze. Childhood's fuzzy, not for furries. Memories freeze. I remember remarkably, at least to me, playing with dough, masak, but with real yeast. Overdid it, mamma mia, that streep in Greece. Abba's blasting. Who is in charge? Hey, don't you tease. I need to charge my mobile phone. Do you not see? I can't communicate, nor watch, hear, write, read, see on this remote island. food to heat or to freeze. I love my mobile slide. It so often does teas with recipes to cook gathered by Mum for me. This was back in the day when I idolized Greece. Its archipelago pita bread without yeast. Made some unleavened bread before we ran out of yeast. The archipelago I went great lengths to see. Patmos was hard to reach during winter in Greece. The waves were so choppy, at least they did not freeze. Blue Dome Santorini, quite idyllic for me. Boomerang, volcano said lava me to tease. Blind Man's Bluff was child's play and Cousin Wing was teased, so terribly often Sun's catalyst or yeast. He was a Star Wars fan in that he was like me. Sadly, we grew apart. Geography, you see. Halted footfall, stored up childhood on freeze. Dreams of rhyming long reams in Meteora, Greece. Just charge my phone. Don't ask me why, and please don't tease my legs and arms. They'll just turn numb. Don't let them freeze. I hope you see havoc in you. See hope in me. Just charge my phone. And please don't tease my legs and arms. Don't let them freeze. Don't ask me why. I hope you see havoc in you. See hope in me. This is Saki.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. Wow, you mixed some real, very, very different universes together in that poem. Very nice. Very nice. Now let me mention, you have time. If you'd like to read a little longer one that you wouldn't normally get a chance to read, you're certainly welcome to, okay?
Okay. I do have, I should read, okay, so Singapore has got basically two poetry forms, which is the twin cinema as well as the anima metodi. So I would like to read the twin cinema one. I think that one I can send it to you, because it was twin cinema, and my daughter played the piano background for it, and my husband co-read it with me. Yeah, so I'll send you the audio for that with the words in the background. So that's the twin cinema version. And now I'll do the anima metodi one, which is also a Singapore form. And this is one of the later ones which I wrote. I will lift up my eyes. It's based on Psalms 121 verses 1 to 2, which is also related to Hills, which is the entry poem for the Francis Brown Literary Festival in Ireland. Yeah. Yes. So Hills is the entry poem for the Ireland competition. But I Will Lift Up My Eyes was written after that, way after that. So I Will Lift Up My Eyes is actually very recent. And in Anima Metodi, the center part of the two stanzas are supposed to link, and yet it introduces a new idea in the second stanza. So this is in the Anima Metodi method. And then I will do Burial in Soil, which is the Dua Tres Pentas step. And I'll explain a little bit about that as well. So now I will do, I'll send you the twin cinema later on, and then I Will Lift Up My Eyes, followed by Burial in Soil. Yeah. Okay? Okay, so this is I Will Lift Up My Eyes. This is prefaced by another verse from the Bible, which is Isaiah 55 verse 12. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. I really like this idea of the trees clapping their hands with the branches. Yeah. So that imagery, that whole visual is so rich to me. So this is I Lift Up My Eyes. The trees of the field clap their hands. The rippling brook gurgles over the pebbles. The song about David as a boy rings in my head. How little stones defeated the mountain Goliath. The hills look down at me from across the U's and the V's. In other words, the lands, valleys, the depressions. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I ought to celebrate every climb, be they from below sea level, valleys, starting points, by fellow sojourners to reach my eye level, or others on tops of hills eyeing their next pinnacle. A pristine hand comes into focus from the Sistine Chapel, outstretched from God to man across the canvas above. So this is very nice. Thank you. This is I Will Lift Up My Eyes. And then I'll do burial in soil. I hope that I can share burial in soil. I'll try. Okay, can you see burial in soil?
I can see it now. Yes.
Okay, great. Right. So this is burial in soil. This is written in dual tres pentastep form. This is the very first dual tres pentastep poem, which is the form that God allowed me to create. And yeah, after reading burial in soil, I'll go through the points about dual tres pentastep. So here goes burial in soil. What is soil
Okay.
except a community that accepts what I need help to bury? Within soil, burrows, cocoon my sorrows. Hear all things spoken, sotto voce count. Here, the white rabbit's watch dictates the time, says it's always right, lots left at the side. I inhale deeply, unmistakable soil scent, so earthy with layered accents. The underground gives a different comfort. That's not what is found in the above ground. My non-bionic ears cannot fathom the hertz of other frequency systems. There is a darkness that is teeming here. Much is going on. Perhaps I'm wrong. Have I been missing, misinterpreting, squinting right through these mal-adjusted eyes? The intangible seems quite within reach. Brand new discovery still feels whimsical. My hand reaches out, tightly grasps the soil. I feel a dampness and shards of sharpness. I let out a cry. We both say goodbye, sort of working with. 你走你的，阳光岛，我过我的父母桥。I bury my head in mee siam, mee bok, fried rice, mee soto, sounds my hurts. Solo, hurts, buried in soil. I go above ground, listen to the sounds. The still shared sky smiles.
Very lovely. Very lovely.
So
Can
I
you
would like
can you
to
tell
talk
me?
a little bit, if you permit me to, about
Please, please. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're communicating.
Okay, so dua transplanter step. Dua is two in Malay, and it means that at least two languages are involved in this poem, in a dua transplanter
Okay.
step poem. And this is the very first one, the debut dua transplanter step. So there are at least two languages, and also there are two end rhymes, two lines that end rhyme in every stanza, like burrow, sorrows, and what else is there? Found, underground, and so on. Then for tres is three in Spanish. So there are three columns. And this is triple cinema, kind of like extra column compared to the twin cinema. So it works the same way. We can read down the columns, right? So of course we can read this way, like the spiral step way. And then we can read it downwards, down the columns. And so that's the triple cinema part of it, the tres. And then we have actually four should be in the name, but it's already such a long name, to a tres penta step. And I also cannot count, right? So so it's kind of like a reflection that the author can't count. So four is missing in the dual tres penta step name. But if you use a numerical name for it, it can be called the 2, 3, 4, 5 step form of poetry. So it's because there are four lines in every stanza. So that accounts for the four. Penta is because there are 5 syllables every line. So here the white rabbits, so that's 5. And then I have I been missing here? So that's 5 as well. So every line is 5 syllables. And step is because it's all stepped this way and like a spiral. And each step is actually a stanza, and each stanza is in itself a poem. And it comprises, I mean, all these steps and stanzas are actually junctioning stanzas, which Dr. Ravi suggested that they be called. So junctioning like at a traffic junction, so you can just change direction as you wish. So you do have a lot of options. So that's junctioning stanzas. And so actually the dual tres penta step involves junctioning stanzas and triple cinema. So sometimes I have also done poems that do not have the other aspects of dual tres penta step, but they incorporate the triple cinema and the junctioning stanzas. So that's about
Very
it.
nice.
Yes. Yeah. I'll stop share.
I like your combination of both simple ideas and scientific complexity. I really enjoy that.
Thank you. I never thought of myself as being very scientific, actually, or mathematical. Or yeah, so it's really interesting. My kids will be so they'll just think that the whole thing is very, very strange and very hilarious. Yeah.
Well,
Thankfully, they are quite mathematical. Yeah. So
would you like to read one more?
okay. I will read. Okay, I think I can do this.
Okay.
Yeah. This was Renew Wings. So this was actually shared at Singapore Poetry Festival, which Eric Vallis was director of, and this was in I think July this year. Yeah. So Renew Wings. And actually it was also a special edition of the it's the poetry festival, but it was run by this particular special edition was run by Kemlin for under BTL for Between the Lines. So it's a combination of Singapore Poetry Festival with Kemlin with Between the Lines. So this is Renew Wings. I search for what I really need to let go of. The power surge that trips and feeds the ego keeps count of phrases versus others. Power rears its ugly head once again, grips yesterday once more, recurs as defunct grime and wants, incurs rising refuse removal costs. I question the cycle of rinse, repeat, hatching, bury the hatchet, breaking eggs from the driver's seat, which cracks Humpty Dumpty always. Someone reminds me that sea turtles bury their eggs to protect the young, just as dogs and other animals squirrel away their assets to safety. There comes a time for hatch day, for the eggs in my life to break, free from shells holding them at bay, emerge, merged as chicken, eaglet.
Very nice.
Chicken and egg may look different, but the DNA isn't. It's just a stage that's undergone reform for certain. And before that day dawns, I await. In the shadows, I learn to yearn in patience or impatience to see them face to face before the establishment of a pecking order where I hold court. Before their resurgence in the new era, I feel real in my private pain, tell all, including myself. There's no error, for there's a season for everything. I spot an eagle majestically swoop down to carry chickens up, away from the coop, not as food, but to feed and protect at its cost. Lasting beauty, fluidity, and elegance egg on both eagle and chickens as they soar in solidarity, allegiance, renew their wings for resurgence. Thank you. So,
Very nice. Very
thank you. So
nice.
this is junctioning stanzas. Yeah.
Very nice. May I read one of mine for you?
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes.
I think it's only fair. I've asked you to read for me, so I'd like to read one for you,
Yes.
okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Ah, my pleasure. I've enjoyed your work so very much.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me today at this interview meeting. Yes.
This is one of my scientific ones, okay? And it comes, I told you I spent a lot of time in the sciences, and even though I live very much an artist's life, I have at least 1.5 feet over in science. Well, one day I was listening to Science News, and they said, we have discovered in the fossil record something that has caused us to completely revise my thinking. So my ears perk up and I'm thinking, my goodness, what new thing has science discovered? Well, it turns out that what we've been calling a brontosaurus, long neck, big body, elephant looking thing, it seems that the brontosaurus never existed. I know, I felt the same way. And what they said was what they've been calling a brontosaurus was really just a teenage diplodocus. So they're really diplodocuses, but they were just the teenagers.
Oh.
So that got me thinking. Okay. Now, As a poet and philosopher, I think about time. As a scientist, I think about the fossil record. So all this kind of stirred around in my head, my heart, and I wrote this. This is called The Bronto I Never Saurus. Oh,
Hmm.
Bronto. Oh, Bronto, so sorry, Saurus. Not once, but twice removed from us. Not relinquished to museum rust. Not languished, piano weary, neath a veil of dust. Must while away the hours you trust. For far away from us you twice. It isn't really very. Not only do you no longer live, not now, in even that slim aware must give no live, because they said you never did. Not even once did breathing live. Deuce duncing life, not ever child, not ever wife, reclaimed once, it seemed, from ancient mire, now so short in hours retire. Twitch tossed, great long tailed beast 500 tons, weaving through our imaginations, you lumbering come. We thought you dumb. We saw you 10 elephants long. We never thought you hadn't come. 'Twas said, twixt head and tail, a bristly bundle of fibrous fun, you drove 2 brains instead of one. You cheated death. You cheated grave. You never even really came. A misided they now are knowing, heard from scientific newscasts crowing. Now they know. Now seem saying those in whose minds you once seemed playing. 200 tons, a slowly moving mountain of mistake. You didn't nuzzle the reeds at the lake. You didn't puzzle at volcanic passion. You didn't stumble through mushy mornings while munching grasses muffle yawning. You didn't hug the sunlight's strength. You never stretched your tail its length. If you live, Lusty, longer, in the mind to whom the thought of Bronto comes, small pleasure this, then take it comes, you're honored here. If ever future number ancient fossils done.
Thank you. Thanks. I just want to say as well that I did a shape poem called Bronto, Not Bruno. So I think I'll send that to you. It's in the shape of a brontosaurus. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's so interesting that you close this with your with the brontosaurus, and that
Okay.
one is also, yeah. So it's the first ever shape poem I did, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you
Jennifer. It's
so much.
really a pleasure speaking with you. I have enjoyed it so much.
Me too. I really enjoyed talking to you, and yeah, I have homework to do though. I have to send you a few things, right? Yes. Okay.
Okay. You take
I'll send
care.
them to you.
Have a good day. All right.
You too. Yes. Bye bye.
Okay.
Good evening
Bye
to
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you.